All right, so I am going to kind of revise my title a little bit here. Yes, I am mapping possible surface distributions, but it's going to be created by a Dart-like impact. And essentially to just be looking at ejecta distributions in binary asteroid systems so that we can look more closely at the conditions of that system during the actual impact. So we have three main questions here. The first one is very general, just how does ejecta behave in a binary asteroid system? The second question being, how do the following effects influence ejecta dynamics? So looking at the target body shape, target body rotation period, separation between the two bodies in a binary system, the mass ratio, and also the impact location. And finally, can provenance maps of ejecta distributions tell us something about the system conditions at the time of the impact? So for this, I use the REBOUND ejecta dynamics package. This is, I have a copy of the code actually in the left QR code, and then I recently published this code in a paper that the QR code for that is on the right, if anyone's interested. But this is a n-body ejecta dynamics package that I created using REBOUND, and it essentially just traces the post-impact particle trajectories in both the short term and the long term. And it has a bunch of different features such as solar radiation pressure, particle size distributions. You can input different shape models or total gravitational potential, different rotation, binary components, and so forth. So I set up a bunch of simulations, 72 total, with variations on shape, mass, ratio, system separation, rotation period, and impact location. And so pretty much, as you can see, for the shape, we have three different types of shape. For mass ratio, system separation, and rotation period, we have two different variations on that. And then for impact location, we chose three different. And so that would be varying somewhere along the longitude and then also somewhere along the latitude. And so total that came out to 72 simulations, which is quite a lot to run. So from this, we ended up producing two different sets of data. One was provenance maps. And so this was essentially our spatial representation of the simulation data, where we recorded the longitude and latitude of all the particles. And in that way, we were able to kind of create an image of pretty much what we would end up taking a picture of if we were to go on a space mission. And so like here I have a picture, an image of Bell's crater, which is honestly a good example of an ejecta distribution or ejecta blanket. And so this is kind of what we would be looking at in one of our images. And so this is an example of one of our provenance maps, not of the Bell's crater impact. But so you can kind of see that like the impact point is the red star in the center, and we see some sort of ejecta blanket around the outside. And so this is really good to determine where resurfacing occurs on the asteroids. But it doesn't really tell us how fast the ejecta landed and like the rate at which ejecta evolved in the system. And so for that, we use the cumulative distribution function. And so this is our temporal representation of the ejecta data. And so essentially here we calculate a running total of the number of particles that have landed on the surface at each time step. And so here's an example of one of our plots. And essentially we show the percentage of the landed particles. So you can see like there is a faster rate here initially, where a lot of like the slower particles are landing, and then further out as the system evolves, there are less and less particles landing on the surface. So we ended up doing a grouping and analysis where we visually compared the CDFs and the provenance maps separately, and we were able to group them into different patterns. We did recruit 4 other people who were, a couple people who were familiar with the project, and then a couple people who were unfamiliar with the project to help sort out these different categories and kind of confirm that like I wasn't going crazy when I was looking at all of these. And then we were able to use the association between these, all like the effects and the images we were seeing using the Kramer's V test. And I'll go into more of that in a bit. But for the provenance maps, we ended up seeing 5 different really prominent ejecta distributions. And so we saw distributions where a lot of the particles landed along the equator. We saw some where it was very local, so not really anywhere else, but mostly concentrated around the impact site. We ended up with an interesting distribution where there is no debris opposite the impact site. And another case where there is a clustering of debris opposite the impact site. You can kind of see just a little bit here and a little bit here. And then finally, we have an evenly spread case where, yes, there is a clustering around the impact site itself, but for the most part, the entire surface got coated and there wasn't any real concentration of particles or lack of particles anywhere. Similarly, we have the CDF categories. For this, we had 8 different categories. Some of them, I think, could be argued that they can be grouped together. We ended up separating them out into separate categories in the end. So we have lots initially where a lot of particles fell initially. Gentle slope and extra long are kind of like just longer time scales that particles fell over. The basic one.
Warning there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so really the main different one here would be the varying and the extra long and gentle slope, where they were different time scales and they did have like very notable distributions. So then we performed a Kramer's V test where we compared the different effects with the CDFs and the provenance maps grouping. And so essentially this was counting the number of simulations of a certain effect that fell into each category and then applying the Kramer's V test. And so this tests the association between each of the effects. And so we were able to determine that the rotation and location are very heavily associated with these CDFs. And so you can very easily see in the CDFs and like sort those out into, okay, these are at a higher rotation, these are lower rotation. Those really the ones that didn't really weren't very noticeable were the shape, the separation, and the mass ratio. Those didn't really play as big of an effect in the ejecta distributions and CDFs that we saw. But we did see a very high association between CDFs and provenance maps, which suggests that looking at an image of a crater and an ejecta blanket, we should be able to, in the future, kind of backtrack and potentially extract a CDF that would tell us more about the rate at which particles landed for that impact. Sorry, there's like an ambulance going on. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'll take those now or later.
Great, thank you. Nothing in the chat right now, so Paul, I'll let you kind of take the room.
Yeah. Do we have any questions in the room? Currently, yeah, there's one.
Yeah. Hi, Jenny. This is Wesley Chambers at Marshall. This is maybe a bit of a slightly off-topic question, but you're applying this package to a binary system. What would be, or could it also be applied to something like lunar ejecta impacts?
Yes, I'm actually kind of working side by side with someone now at the Florida Space Institute to set up the code for them to help them run simulations with lunar ejecta. You
Okay,
probably
thank
know him, Phil Metzger. He's working with him.
Got it. Thanks.